Nothing stated by Steve Bartlett during the Fight Back show is intended to be legal advice, and appearing on the show does not create an attorney-client relationship with Steve Bartlett. Before taking legal action, it is advisable to consult with an attorney of your choice. The views and opinions of any guests or callers of the Fight Back show are the views of the callers and guests and are not necessarily the viewpoints of Steve Bartlett.
Welcome, brothers and sisters, to the Church of Florida. I am your Reverend Steve Bartlett, and I want to lead you all with a prayer, our nice Florida prayer. To quote St. John Lennon in his immortal words of wisdom, Mother Superior, jump the gun. 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 Happiness is a warm gun. Bang, bang, shoot, shoot. Happiness is a warm gun. Bang, bang, shoot, shoot. Now, I apologize for my bad singing here, but I just got over a cold, and that's a really hard song to sing. Anyway, the reason I'm starting with that is because Florida is not going to be known as the Sunshine State anymore now that, there's so much blood dripping off of the corpses of our bodies here. Instead, we are going to be known as the handgun capital of the world, the murder capital of the world, the stand your ground capital of the world. Because here in Florida, we don't put up with it anymore. We stand our ground. We're macho. We are the state of John Wayne. We are the state of Clint Eastwood. Here in Florida, you get to stand your ground. Now, every year we have a new stand your ground case here in Florida. Last year it was the Trayvon Martin trial, in which Trayvon was gunned down and is now dead, and it caused a national debate about whether or not his death was justifiable or not. The jury, by using the stand your ground laws of Florida, ruled in favor of the defendant. Now, we have a brand new case here in 2014, a brand new case here, just like Leonard Skinner had the song, The Ballad of Curtis Lowe. We have a new song here, The Ballad of Curtis Reeves, former police captain, which is royalty in the police force. Here in Tampa Bay, we have our own, so Miami isn't the only place which gets the cool, juicy headlines. We have our own shooting, our own needless death. A young man who's having dinner with his wife is at the movie theater, and he's breaking the biggest law in America, which is texting during the coming attractions. Now, he ends up dying as a result of texting during the coming attraction, so I don't want to even know what could happen to him if he actually was texting during the movie itself. But during the coming attractions, young man was texting, and a former police officer trained in the way to deal with crises and trained in the methods of using a gun, killed him, shot him dead. And because he was texting and he wouldn't stop texting, words were said. And according to Mr. Reeves, who's a 71-year-old former police officer, the victim or the person who was the evil texter threw popcorn at Mr. Reeves. And Mr. Reeves took his gun that he was legally allowed to carry and pointed it at the gentleman, the evil texter. And despite the guy's wife trying to get in between them, he pulled the trigger and shot him dead. Killed him dead, and when the police came, he claimed it was justifiable under the Stand Your Ground law. And the police didn't buy that. Chris Nocco, who is the deputy sheriff of Pasco County, said in his opinion it was not a Stand Your Ground case. And that's how most of the public has been. Even though the public was divided about the Trayvon Martin shooting, in which most Democrats thought that George Zimmerman was guilty of murder and most Republicans were on the side of George Zimmerman. This case, pretty much most people have come down against Mr. Reeves. I haven't heard anybody say that they believe that the Stand Your Ground law would justify shooting somebody for texting at the movie theater, even if they threw popcorn at you. However, I was reading in the USA Today an article about the shooting, and I was looking at it while I was at lunch, because that's what I do. I read the USA Today during lunch, but I do it on my iPad. And it had a little button that you could click and you could watch a video. And they were talking to a talking head on the video, and I got to watch a prominent attorney give his opinion about the shooting by Curtis Reeves. And by my surprise, the talking head that was on the video was my good friend, Steve Romine. Steve Romine is one of the most brilliant attorneys I've ever met in my life. He is someone I used to work with years ago, and he has been terrific. He's a high-profile, outstanding lawyer. I can't say anything but good things about him. And he came up with a conclusion on Stand Your Ground that I haven't heard anyone else say. According to Mr. Romine, he believes that Curtis Reeves actually has a valid Stand Your Ground defense. I couldn't believe it. When I read this, I could not believe it. I'm like, what? There's no way this guy's got a Stand Your Ground defense. But what Mr. Romine said is that Stand Your Ground allows you not only to kill when you're in fear of death, but it also allows you to kill if you're in reasonable fear of great bodily harm. That's what Steve said in the interview, and that in this case, all they would have to do was show that Curtis Reeves was in fear of great bodily harm, and that would be a justifiable killing. So I read this, and I went to my law books and started doing some more research into the Stand Your Ground law. And to my surprise, I found out that what Romine said was partly true and partly false. Partly true on the ground that, yes, I believe that Curtis Reeves has a valid defense for Stand Your Ground under the laws in Florida which allow this type of crap. But wrong because of what Mr. Romine said about the standard you use in order to use the Stand Your Ground defense. The truth is, it is easier to use Stand Your Ground than what Steve Romine claimed it is. It's even easier. So today on the show, what I want to do is I want to explore the law about Stand Your Ground and tell you how it works, so you understand what the statute means and why it's so controversial, okay? Now, the way the law used to work in Florida and most other places in the country is if you're facing a danger of deadly force or serious bodily injury, you could only use deadly force yourself if there's no other way out of it. You have a duty to try to retreat. At least this is the way the law used to be. So in other words, if you see danger coming towards you, you have to try to escape danger. You're not supposed to confront it and start a gunfight. You're supposed to run away or walk away. The only difference is in your house. If someone breaks into your house and you are threatened with danger, you don't have to retreat any further. You can use deadly force and shoot someone dead in your home. That's called the castle doctrine. But the way the law used to be is if you're out on the street and a danger came upon you, you had to try to find another avenue away. You don't ride into danger. So if you see people running around with baseball bats in the street and you got a gun, you walk away from them. You don't show up, start a fight so that you can hope to gun them down, okay? But that law changed. That law changed because now you no longer have to walk away or back down from a fight. You can match force with force. You have no duty to retreat. So let me go through all the things that have to apply before you can use stand your ground, and I'll tell you why, under the law, in my opinion, Curtis Reeves has a very valid defense for stand your ground, despite what Chris Snocco in the sheriff's office says. Okay, well, first of all, the first thing you have to do in order to use stand your ground is the person has to be engaged in a lawful activity. If you're breaking any laws whatsoever, doesn't matter if it's a felony, misdemeanor, traffic offense, you can't use stand your ground. So before you fire the gunshot, you can't be doing anything illegal, okay? So the question is, in this particular case, was what's his name? Curtis Reeves, was he doing anything illegal in this particular case? Well, the answer is no, he's sitting there watching a movie. Not doing anything illegal. He's having words with the person. That's not illegal either. So right now, he's not doing anything illegal. But if you're engaged in something illegal, you can't say stand your ground. You can't commit a burglary and then say, oh, I was threatened by a person with a gun, so I shot him first. You can't use stand your ground if you're committing a burglary. You can't be doing anything illegal. The second thing is you have to be attacked. Well, what does attack mean? Well, someone has to be doing something violent towards you. Someone has to be doing something illegal towards you in order for you to feel the need to defend yourself. Okay, so in this particular case, what Curtis claimed, at least what he told the police, at least what I'm going by what the media says, is that he was throwing popcorn at him. I was getting popcorn thrown at me, so that's how I'm being attacked. Someone's throwing popcorn at me, okay? The next thing is you have to be at a place where you're allowed to be, where you have a right to be. Now, people were criticizing George Zimmerman in the Trayvon Martin case because he was following Trayvon Martin in the vehicle in the neighborhood. But legally, did George Zimmerman have a right to be in the car driving around his own neighborhood? Yes, just because the police suggested that he go back home and not follow Trayvon around doesn't mean that it's illegal for him to be driving around the neighborhood. He had a legal right to be anywhere he wanted in his neighborhood. And in this particular case, Curtis had a legal right to be in the movie theater. He paid his ticket. He paid his price of admission, so he's allowed to be in the movie theater. Which means, let's say you're at someone's home. They invite you as a dinner guest, and then you have words, and then it leads to violence. Can you shoot them down? Well, if you have a legal right to be there because you're invited, you don't have to back down under that scenario. If they tell you to leave before the violence escalates, and then you shoot the person, then you have no legal right to be there and you can't use stand your ground. But in the particular case that we're dealing here right now, Mr. Reeves' case, he has a legal right to be in the movie theater. He paid his admission. No one kicked him out of the movie theater, so therefore it was a legal place. So far, the defense is still there. The next thing is he has no duty to retreat and a right to stand his ground and meet force with force, including deadly force, if he reasonably believes. Okay? So the next part is it's about belief. It has nothing to do with whether, in fact, you are in danger of being killed. It has no idea whether the person really can kill you. Let's say they have an unloaded gun and pull an unloaded gun on you. Well, even though they can't kill you with an unloaded gun, a person would reasonably believe that their life is in danger and then can shoot and fire first in order to protect themselves. So it doesn't have to actually be a true danger. It has to be a reasonable danger. You have to have reasonable belief. Now, if it's an unreasonable belief, you can't use that as self-defense either. What would be an unreasonable belief? If someone's waving a daisy or giving you the peace sign and you interpret that as being a threat, you can't sit there and say, oh, I thought he was going to kill me by pulling his finger and saying bang. That would be unreasonable. Everyone knows that you can't kill someone by pulling your finger and saying bang. So therefore, you can't use the defense of stand your ground. Okay? But so you have to have reasonable belief. Reasonable belief for what? Reasonable belief that it's necessary. So that means no other way. You got to do it. Necessary to do these three things, okay? To prevent death. Well, okay, if someone's going to shoot me with their gun and I think they're going to kill me, I think it's necessary to stop me from dying, so that's self-defense. That's not controversial. The second one is to stop great bodily harm. Okay, so if someone is going to stab you with a knife or hit you in the head with a baseball bat, can you use deadly force to stop that? If someone's swinging a Louisville Slugger at your skull, can you shoot them dead? Yes, you can under the stand your ground law, because that's considered to be great bodily harm. But here's the third one. This is the one that's the big controversy that no one talks about, and this is going to really blow your mind. The third thing that allows you to shoot someone dead is to prevent the commission of a forcible felony. So three things. One is death, okay, everyone agrees with that. Second is to avoid great bodily harm. No one disagrees with the ability to defend yourself if threatened by great bodily harm. And the third one is to prevent the commission of a forcible felony. Okay, well, that sounds like maybe that's something that's good, maybe that's bad. I don't know. The question is, what is a forcible felony? Well, the legislature defined what a forcible felony is. And most of the things that are forcible felonies, people would agree that you should be allowed to defend yourself even to the point of killing the other person if threatened with one of these crimes. So if you think it's reasonably necessary to protect yourself from one of these crimes, from being a victim of one of these crimes, you can take someone's life. And here's the crimes. Treason. Well, that doesn't happen that often. We're not really, in a state of rebellion anymore. Murder, obviously. Manslaughter. Sexual battery, which is rape. Carjacking. So if someone's carjacking you and you have a reasonable fear you're going to be carjacked, you can kill them. Home invasion, robbery, burglary, arson, aggravated assault, aggravated battery, aggravated stalking, aircraft piracy, or unlawful throwing of a destructive device or a bomb. So if someone throws a hand grenade at you, you have a right to shoot them dead. Or, and here's the kicker, okay? I said all these crimes. Aggravated battery is a battery where you have serious bodily injury. But, or here's the kicker. A forcible felony is any other felony which involves the use or threat of physical force or violence against an individual. So any felony at all, if it involves the threat of force or violence against an individual, is considered to be a forcible felony, and a forcible felony is something that you can use stand your ground on, okay? So let's look at what these things are. What is an aggravated battery? Well, a battery, a simple battery, which is a misdemeanor, is intentionally touching somebody against their will. Now, when people think of a battery, you think of someone being punched in the face. That's a battery. Can you kill them if they punch you in the face? No, because that's a misdemeanor. It's not a felony. It's not a felony. Okay? It's a felony. Now, if you slap somebody in the butt, or pinch them, or tickle them against their will, or just touch them, that is a battery. It's not a felony because there's no bodily harm. It's a misdemeanor. You can't shoot them dead for that. Okay? What makes it an aggravated battery is if you are intentionally causing great bodily harm, permanent disability, or you use a deadly weapon. So if you hit somebody in the head with a baseball bat, but they got a thick skull and it doesn't crack their skull open, that's still an aggravated battery because it's a dangerous weapon. Or if you punch them in the face and you split their skull open because you got such a good punch, both of those they're both aggravated batteries. And because they're aggravated batteries, you can use stand your ground and defend yourself and shoot somebody dead if you're threatened with either of those crimes. But hold on. There's another way that a person can be convicted of an aggravated battery besides those two ways. Here it is. If a woman is pregnant, okay, and the person knows or reasonably should have known that the person is pregnant, committing a battery on a pregnant woman is automatically an aggravated battery, regardless of whether you use a weapon or not, regardless as to whether or not there was any bodily harm at all. So in other words, if you just, let's say, touch a woman on the butt and she's pregnant, you know she's pregnant, so you smack her on the butt, okay? No one's hurt, something you shouldn't do, normally a misdemeanor. In this case, it becomes a felony, and because it's a felony, if a woman is afraid that you're going to slap her on the butt and she's pregnant, she can shoot you dead under stand your ground, okay? Or if you tickle her, or you just touch her, you just touch a woman against her will, if she's pregnant, she can shoot you dead under stand your ground law. Why? Because that's an aggravated battery. An aggravated battery is a forcible felony. And if you're afraid of a forcible felony, that gives you a right to kill them under stand your ground. Okay? But there's other types of laws as well that apply in this particular case. And you still haven't sat there and you say, well, let's see. What the victim is accused of doing is throwing popcorn. Throwing popcorn isn't a deadly weapon. You don't, unless you hit somebody in the throat and they choke to death, which I doubt is going to happen. That wouldn't be reasonable. And the person, Curtis, wasn't injured by the popcorn hitting him in the head. It didn't cause him a concussion. So that sounds at worst as if it were a misdemeanor. Why, if it's only a misdemeanor, could Curtis Reeves say it was stand your ground? And here it is. Okay? Under the law, any misdemeanor, okay, any misdemeanor battery at all gets enhanced to a felony automatically if the victim is over the age of 65. So in other words, if you commit a battery, a misdemeanor battery on a person over the age of 65, that makes it a felony automatically, regardless of what you do. So once again, you don't need to use a deadly weapon on a person over the age of 65. It makes it a felony. You don't have to cause serious bodily injury on a person. It makes it a felony. All you have to do is age of 65 against the law, and that becomes felony. And because it is a forcible felony, it is the type of crime that if you're in fear of that forcible felony, you can kill somebody under the stand your ground law. So therefore, throwing popcorn at somebody is a misdemeanor. It's a misdemeanor battery because it causes no harm, it causes no injury, and it's a non-deadly weapon. But it is touching somebody against their will. Throwing a spitball would be considered a battery. Touching somebody, smacking them in the butt, they would all be considered to be batteries. But because, in this particular case, the former police officer who was trained on how to use a gun and trained on the ways of the law and how to properly respond to a violent situation, because he was over the age of 65, throwing the popcorn at him constituted a felony battery. And because it's a felony battery, it is considered under the law to be a forcible felony. And because it's a forcible felony, it was lawful for him to shoot dead this young man while he was at the dinner at the movie theaters with his wife. It was lawful. It is allowed for a person over the age of 65, if they are threatened with any misdemeanor battery, because it's automatically a felony, to shoot somebody dead. So old people in Florida should rejoice, because if you're over the age of 65 and someone messes with you, you can shoot them dead. That's what stand your ground allows you to do. If you're an old fogey and someone puts their finger in your chest, misdemeanor bumped to a felony, forcible felony, allowed under stand your ground, shoot them dead. Okay, someone spits at you, you can shoot them dead. Someone slaps you on the butt, you can shoot them dead. Or if it's somebody that you love, if someone slaps Granny on the butt, he can shoot them dead. Why? Forcible felony. Why is it a felony? Because of the age. Period. That's what stand your ground allows people to do. And that's really, really scary. Under the law, if the law was followed, in my opinion, this man should be acquitted, which is terrible. People would call that a miscarriage of justice. But a real miscarriage of justice is if I don't take this call, because we've got a caller right now. Hi.
How you doing, Steve? How you doing?
Is there a caller?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
All right, so here's my thing. I've been checking out your show, and so are you basically saying that you would support someone, because it's under the law, that if a man over 65 years old had a piece of popcorn thrown at him, you would support him pulling out a weapon and killing somebody?
No, I wouldn't support that. I think that's horrible. But I'm saying under the law, if you follow the law, you have to vote not guilty under those facts. The real criminals are the people who wrote the law and who have defended the law. The law needs to be changed.
Well, I'm completely glad you agree that way. I guess I just misunderstood your story there, so I apologize.
No, okay, it's okay. The law is horrible, but I'm just under the law. There's a good chance of winning. The judge might just throw it out under those facts. I just laid it out. If you're over the age of 65 and someone commits a battery on you, throwing popcorn is clearly a battery, you have a right to shoot them dead under the stand your ground law. It sucks. I hate it. It's a horrible law. It should have been changed after Trayvon got shot, but people continue to defend it. Hopefully this time people will realize how ridiculous this law is and realize we're not living in the Wild West and live in a civilized society and change it.
Absolutely. Too many loopholes.
Oh, yeah, it's terrible loopholes. And there's no reason to have this law either. I mean, why did we have to change it? I don't remember, going around 10 years ago saying, God, I feel unsafe because if I'm threatened with danger, I can't kill the person. I have to try to run away if possible. And God, every day you're reading in the papers of people who have guns who aren't using them because they're scared to use them because the self-defense laws might not allow them to use their guns to defend themselves. Never read a story about that, did you?
No, never.
Okay? That's because it didn't exist. The reason this gun was passed is because of pressure of the right-wing NRA going to different states, writing these laws, because people, secretly, a lot of people, I hate saying this because there's a lot of gun owners who are good people, but there's some gun owners who just really want to kill people. They bought these really cool weapons, they're nice shiny toys, they walk around with them in their, tucked in their pockets, and they want to shoot people. And they want an excuse to be able to shoot somebody dead. And this stand your ground law allows people to be Dirty Harry. It allows people to sometimes legally kill another human being.
Absolutely. You basically summed it up right there.
And that's just absolutely horrible. And you look at the way it is, some of these statistics came out when Trayvon Martin was shot. And the question I talked to you, I said earlier about how it's about perception, how you have to reasonably fear, and it's about your subjective belief as to whether you have a right to be afraid as opposed to whether it's a real threat. Well, right now, when the victim has been African American, okay, and the defense of stand your ground has been raised, 73% of the time the defendant is walked. 3 out of 4 times when the person who gets shot is black, the person's been able to say that they had reasonable fear. And I guess people thought, well, if the person's coming at you is black, that's a reason to be fearful. But only 59% of the time has it been effective when the person who ends up dead has been white. So I guess juries have felt that people should be believed to have a reasonable fear of black people more than they should have a reasonable fear of white people.
Absolutely. Hey, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, I really appreciate you taking the phone call, man. Great show tonight.
Okay, what's your name?
Zach.
Zach, thanks for calling, Zach. I appreciate it.
No problem. Take care.
Okay, super. Okay, now's the time for my show where it's called Bartlett Busts Back. And what I'm blasting this week is I saw something on the internet that somebody had a interview with, Pierce, the English guy who has a talk show who took over for Larry Gang. Can't think of his name. But he had a talk show on, and some religious wacko was on the show talking about how bad gay marriage is. And Pierce Morgan said, well, show me in the Bible, where does Jesus condemn gay marriage? And this right-winger started quoting scripture, and Pierce Morgan didn't say anything in response. And people were blogging how great the right-wing preacher was for putting Pierce Morgan in his place by throwing scripture back at him. Well, I actually looked at the scripture that the preacher was looking at, and what was said by the preacher was actually wrong, because I actually looked in the Bible and read it. The 2 arguments that the preacher made about why Jesus would have been against gay marriage was, the first was when Jesus said allegedly that I didn't come to replace the law, I came to fulfill the law. They use that as an interpretation that, therefore, since the Old Testament condemned homosexuality, Jesus must condemn homosexuality. But that's not really true, because Jesus did, in fact, reject parts of the Old Testament. Remember, the law said an eye for an eye. Jesus specifically rejected an eye for an eye, for turn the other cheek. So Jesus had no problems rejecting some of the Old Testament. The second part was when they said that Jesus defined marriage as being between a married man and a woman when he forbid a couple from being divorced. But what that is, it wasn't talking about the definition of marriage. Jesus was talking about why it should be illegal for there to be a divorce. Didn't say that exclusively husband and wives could be the only people to get married. He just said that once people are married before the eyes of God, they should not be allowed to be divorced. So unless this minister wants to say that all divorces should be illegal, then he doesn't know what he's talking about. Jesus never said anything about gay marriage. Jesus believed in love and forgiveness, and anything that's for love and forgiveness is something that I'm for, by the way. So, again, when people are facing injustice, you have three options. Option number one, close your eyes, ignore it. Option number two, hey, just give in and join the group, go along with the stream, and who cares? Or option number three, you can rise, you can reject, and even if it's futile, even if you lose, you can fight back. Thank you. I'll see you next week.
You need to hire an attorney who is not afraid to fight. Steve Bartlett is an experienced board-certified criminal attorney who practices in the Tampa Bay area. Steve can represent you in any criminal, family, civil injury, or bankruptcy case. Call 727-942-1000. That's 727-942-1000 for a free consultation. Offices in Tampa, Clearwater, and Newport Richey. You need to fight back.